an unconditional release, which means he can sign with WCW immediately if he wanted. Spoiler, he's going to ECW.
Oh, dude, not to bring up darkness, but you just mentioned people overdosing. Isn't that how he passed away?
I don't know if he died from drugs. I think he did, but I can't remember if that's a rumor or if it's real, because there was a lot of stuff going around. It's like, no, he died of a heart attack or something like that, which could be drug related. I don't know. But there's a lot of word that he was the unofficial member of the clique because he wrestled in Mexico a lot, and he was basically their drug mule. But again, I emphasize this is just a rumor.
You say he was a member of the clique?
An unofficial member of the clique.
Well, that explains why when he went to WCW, he was like Scott Hall's lackey. Yeah,
he carried his bags and his weed. So there you go. Allegedly,
I don't consider weed a drug, to be fair, but I hear you.
Yeah. Here's an interesting headline for you. A tag team called the Hardy Brothers, Matt and Chip Hardy. Not sure if it was Jeff going by Chip or if Uncle Dave just got bad info, which would be a first. They got a tryout match at the latest Raw tapings. So also a guy named James Arndt working a tryout match looked pretty good, allegedly. He later became Joey Abs from the Mean Street Posse.
If I remember right, by the way, the Hardy Boys would be the guys holding the doors open at King of the Ring when guys came out.
Yeah, they were. I remember that. So, I think they were only like 16 at the time or something like that.
Well, it was this year, so.
Yeah. That's because they lied about their age and they showed like fake IDs or something like that so they could get a tryout.
Ah, so they're the ones who made Mass Transit do that.
Good Lord. Dwayne Johnson debuted under the name Flex Kavana at the latest USWA show, teaming with Brian Christopher in a match against Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee. Kavana has only had about a half a dozen matches, but word is that he showed a lot of potential.
Yeah, it probably won't pay off.
Yeah, that guy ain't going nowhere. Finally, getting to the WCW portion here before we move on to the event itself. Slamboree's buy rate was way down from last month's uncensored pay-per-view, which was once again showing that Hulk Hogan is the one who pops WCW's big buy rates. Who could have predicted that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember that event just sucking.
Slamboree?
Yeah.
That was another one I didn't watch. I didn't watch a lot of WCW during this era. This show, by the way, does not have Hulk Hogan on it. Just putting that out there. But he will be on Bash to the Beach the next month. This is the
last one for a while. And then very many in 97 will not have him on there, despite being the champion.
I thought it was very weird that, because he was on a deal to only work so many shows per year and so many pay-per-views, so they used him sparingly. But why did they not have him on Starrcade?
Which Starrcade?
1995.
He wasn't on that one?
No. You remember that one was the one with like the international tournament or whatever? I think Sting won a big...
Oh, that was that one.
Yeah.
I think that's why, because it was not like a WCW event. It was a co-thing, and my only guess is they're not going to have Hogan on there to lose, and they didn't... I don't...
My thing was, like, they could have had him in, like, a special attraction match or something like that, but I don't know. I was like, dude, this is...
Yeah, but isn't that redundant? I mean...
Yeah. But it's like...
That's my thinking.
That was a weak card, too. I'm like... I think that was one of the worst-selling Starrcades ever.
We might have to go back and talk about this another time, but if you really think about it, Starrcade was not as major as it was supposed to be in, like, the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, well, because Eric Bischoff himself said he didn't see Starrcade as their big tentpole event.
I feel like, if anything, in his time, Halloween Havoc was.
Yeah, exactly. They asked, because Conrad asked him, he's like, okay, so what was your tentpole event in your opinion then? And he had said Halloween Havoc. And then he asked Tony Schiavone, he said, in your opinion, what was your big event of the year? And Tony said, oh, Halloween Havoc. It's like,
yeah,
okay,
that's what it felt like.
Yeah, it's like, so this is just a thing with you guys? Like, and he was like, why was it not Starrcade? And he's like, I don't know, I just never really felt like it was a big thing. It's like, that was the first. What the hell? Like, they were the first. While Vince McMahon, a lot of people don't know this, Vince McMahon was the first to do wrestling on pay-per-view, but WCW, or NWA rather, was the first to do wrestling on closed circuit with Starrcade. So a lot of people don't realize that. Wrapping up here, the Road Warriors have quit WCW. They heard how much Scott Hall and Kevin Nash are getting paid, and they felt that they should be making the same. Look, I love the Road Warriors, but I don't know about that one.
We're about 8 years past them being like the guys.
Yeah, pretty much. Kind of sad, but WCW wanted the Great Muta to put over Diamond Dallas Page at this pay-per-view we're talking about here, but New Japan Pro Wrestling saw Page as a prelim wrestler, and so they refused to send Muta over to work the show. Oy, how things would change in a couple of years, eh?
Yep.
Also, this was the month that Brian Pillman signed a 3-year contract with the WWF. And
there's going to be some mentions of that in the show, but we'll get to.
Well, also, Pillman made his first wrestling appearance since his big car wreck that injured him. He was at an ECW show, and he showed up in a wheelchair, and he got into an altercation with Mikey Whipwreck, and he cut a promo insulting ECW and other wrestlers. He also, apparently, when he was talking about the Gangstas, dropped the N-word. Allegedly, he dropped the N-word while talking about the rap group NWA, but...
Okay, did New Jack say this?
Yeah, New Jack said it, but Paul Heyman kind of confirmed it.
I'm just saying because New Jack has said that about like 100 guys.
I know, yeah. If anybody goes and watches New Jack's Dark Side of the Ring episode, allegedly, according to him, everybody was racist and everybody dropped the N-word on him. So
yeah. I'm not saying some people didn't. I'm just saying the sheer amount of people he says did is hard to believe.
Well, apparently this was all true because New Jack went absolutely nuts. He confronted Pillman backstage, and Heyman eventually weighed in on it and said that basically saying that was a mistake, but New Jack reacting the way he did was also a mistake. So just a couple more notes. Eric Bischoff has offered Chris Jericho a full-time contract, so we're soon to see Jericho in the WCW. Scott Hall debuted on Monday Nitro to kick off June. Kevin Nash was not far behind him. We'll see them both on this show. And also, the WWF sent a cease and desist letter to them because Razor, or Scott Hall rather, was doing the Razor mannerisms, still looking like Razor. He even, during his promo on this show, said, cut them up. Or was it carve them up? I forget.
Carve them up, yeah.
Carve them up, yeah. So he said that, and so they claim that they're trying to benefit off of the WCW or WWF trademarks. So, and this would be upheld in court, by the way. Also, we would soon see the fake Razor and fake Diesel. So, yeah. And I didn't know this part. During this lawsuit, they were threatening to withhold Scott Hall and Kevin Nash's royalty checks until this was all figured out. Man, just sticking it to them right out the door.
Well, they kind of screw them over in a way, so I get it.
Yeah. All right, now, finally, we're on to the pay-per-view. Lots to talk about here. It's the Great American Bash 1996 from June 16th, 1996. Took place at the Royal Farms Arena in Baltimore, Maryland, with an attendance of 9,000 exactly. I think that's a sellout for this arena. It did a buy rate of .48. It had 170,000 buys on the pay-per-view. So, not anywhere near about what it did for for Bash of the Beach, but it sold more than Slamboree only had 155,000. This had 170. Bash of the Beach did 250,000. So Hogan equals buys, brother.
That works for me, brother.
A short little promo opens the show over some very 80s style promo music.
My first note about that was it felt like Saturday Night's Main Event.
Yeah, it was real weird. Even Bobby Heenan, Lex Luger, and then a giant man. So there you go. My favorite, I had to take a note from this because it was so stupid. The Giant's promos were laughable. He said, Lex Luger, don't bother looking up the definition of the Giant in the dictionary because you're going to feel it firsthand from a chokeslam. And then he chokes himself and laughs because he's a dirty boy and he likes it rough.
Wow.
Why would you look up the definition of giant in the dictionary? That's my first question with this.
I don't know. You're dumb.
You're bored. Well, Lex Luger did lose a battle to a shirt one time, so there's that. The national anthem. It was a close fight, though. Yes, it was. The national anthem follows before we head over to commentary and see Tony Schiavone and Dusty Rhodes. Dusty is wearing a red leather coat that he didn't take off for a solid 3 years in the 1990s. Many, many red cows had to die for that coat.
That was a note I made, too. It was like, man, Tony Schiavone shows up in like a tuxedo-like suit, and Dusty is like wearing like a T-shirt, jeans, and a red leather jacket.
Yeah, a sleeveless
Which one of them missed the memo? I don't...
Hey, Dusty's like, baby, I'm just going to show up in whatever I want to wear, okay, daddy? That tuxedo's for somebody else, baby. We're going to leave you right where you at.
Also, I think we should mention it was Craig Pittman holding the flag, by the way. I think they ran out of stuff for him.
They're like, hey, you mind being the flag bearer? We'll pay you.
Well, I think he was like a legit soldier, so, I mean, that made sense. But, like,
right.
Instead of wrestling, though, that's what he's doing. I mean, not that that's bad, but he should have been wrestling, too.
Right, yeah. It's kind of, by 96, they're like, all right, we're done with you. I didn't mention this in the notes because they mentioned it on the pay-per-view. So Tony Schiavone announced that Dick Murdoch passed away this month. And this was especially prudent because Dusty Rhodes is his former tag team partner. So, Dusty kind of eulogized him a little bit, but then, Dusty would, said, a couple words about him, and then he went right into pumping up the pay-per-view. I'm like, dang, you're a salesman all the way, buddy.
Well, he did mention that Dick Murdoch would love the pay-per-view, so I made sure to include him. So it was a nice transition.
Yeah. Well, something that I didn't love, our first match of the night, Fire and Ice versus the Steiner brothers. The winners will become the number one contenders for the tag team titles. This went for 10.5 minutes. I said it was a hard-hitting match. I didn't hate it at first, even with a few blown spots. At one point, Norton hits Scott Steiner with a shoulder breaker and then goes for a Fujiwara armbar. Then Rick comes in and starts kicking him repeatedly in the head, and Norton just no-sells it. Best spot of the match, in my opinion. More and more blown spots, a ton of false finishes, including the Steiners hitting their tag team finisher for a near fall, which blew my mind.
On that, by the way, I noticed when they lifted, I think it was Norton they had up, right?
Yeah.
They put Norton up for it. I straight sitting there on one knee just watching it instead of trying to stop it. And he's literally 2 feet away. I'm like, dude.
Well, yeah, there was one point where Norton just watches one of the Steiners run by him and break up a pin, and he didn't even move to, he just watched him the whole time. I'm like, stop him?
I mean, were they gassing or what?
I don't know. The finish of the match was Scott sends Norton into the ropes. He goes for a Frankensteiner, and Norton just kind of flops on his face, and it was horrible.
Oh, thank God it's over.
But Scott still pins him for the win. I'm like, he just fell over onto his side. Uncle Dave Meltzer gave this 3 stars. I gave it 2.
I gave it 2 as well. I thought it was, I thought it dragged, but if you go back and watch it, the fans are heavily into it, so.
I think Uncle Dave gave it 3 stars because, one of the men in the match was super popular in the Tokyo Dome. So, got to give some love to Scott Flash Norton.
That's an extra star if I've ever seen it.
Hell yeah. Mean Gene Okerlund is in the back interviewing Kevin Sullivan and Jimmy Hart. He calls Jimmy Hart a Nathan Lane wannabe. Oh, what the hell? The promo basically consisted of, listen,